Alright guys, bit of a response video today to a video by a pretty large YouTuber, Charlie, on a channel called GetHip. It's got 350 odd thousand followers, so done pretty well. Makes a lot of VR content, although that is soon to change apparently. He says that he's getting out of the VR YouTubing business. He's not having fun with VR anymore. The title of the video is VR is not fun anymore.
So today I'm going to tell you why I now hold such a disdain for this technology as someone who's been such a proponent of it for the last 3 years. Like Andy in Toy Story 2, I look at this headset and I think, I don't want to play with you anymore.
In which he really makes some interesting commentary complaints, but they really are all centered on meta, and I think that it really can be described as someone. His video comes from the angle of someone who's really sort of disappointed with what Meta's doing, not VR as a whole.
Jesus, virtual reality. More like, I'd rather Zuckerberg virtually piss in my virtual eyes than ever have to suffer through Meta Horizon Worlds again.
It doesn't sound like, and looking at his channel as well, it doesn't look like he plays PSVR 2. There's a lot of fun stuff happening on there, and maybe it'd be fun to look at some of the comparisons there. Why this pretty big YouTuber has officially sort of announced that he's getting out of VR and he's done with it and it's not fun anymore. But he makes some interesting points and certainly some enlightening commentary on Meta specifically. So the first thing that he talks about is the fact that from his perspective, VR is infested with kids.
Any of us who have ventured into basically any multiplayer VR game have at some point had to endure the wrath of an 8-year-old wielding the M-word like it's the Infinity Gauntlet. Now, annoyance for us adults aside, the wider point here is Meta have now effectively openly endorsed this age range by dropping these age requirements, which I think is just morally wrong when these headsets are fundamentally and functionally not designed for kids.
So this is definitely more true on the Quest. It is a high percentage of Quest owners that are kids because it's parents that have bought their kids the cheapest, easiest to get into, simplest headset on the market. You know, they might have expressed some interest, or the parents think, oh, this new technology, it makes a good present, especially the Quest 2 and Quest 3S, heavily subsidized by Meta, sold at a loss. So VR is expensive technology, it's still new, of course, but Meta sell it at a loss. So they have the cheapest headsets on the market, and that has made sales skyrocket. But it means that, yeah, a lot of people playing Quest are kids. And if you go into any of the free games on there, that's where the kids are. And he talks about Gorilla Tag. Gorilla Tag being one of the free games, VR Chat as well, and there's some others as well. The kids aren't really buying games on the Quest. They're playing the free stuff. And if you go in the lobbies of those games like Gorilla Tag, it is full of screechers, is what we've come to call them. And as an adult, that is irritating, absolutely. Those high-pitched screechy voices, the inane chatter, the absolute nonsense. It's just not where you want to be, is it? And that is going to definitely lessen your fun when trying to play multiplayer games. So he's got an absolutely good point there. I can imagine that is really irritating, takes the shine off. On PSVR 2, it's a different story. There is a much higher percentage of sort of grown-ups, people with disposable incomes, that are on PSVR 2, because I guess, again, it's more an investment. So you're more likely to get people that are spending their own money and committed to VR as a medium, buying their own games as well, and investing in that platform. So yeah, you obviously got to buy the PS5 and a headset as well. You're looking at around about £1,000 to get into VR on PSVR 2. Unless you got it in the recent sale, in which case you could have got into VR for around 750 quid. But it's still obviously a huge investment compared to your parent giving you a headset for free for nothing. And then, yeah. So it's very different on PSVR 2. It isn't that multiplayer lobbies don't tend to be overrun with kids. Of course you do still have some. but it's not to the same extent. The next thing that GetHip talks about is the fact that it's just a lot of shovelware. Again, this is relating to the Quest store. And it is a complaint that a lot of people are making about the Quest store, is it's hard to find the good content. It doesn't seem to be curated in a way that makes it easy to find, new releases, good selling games, like high quality games, well rated games. It does seem to be that it's just a mess of crap on the Quest store, and you come up against a lot of shovelware, and that's again going to be a bit sort of disheartening, disparaging to see that. Again, it's not the case on PSVR 2. You go to the store and you can obviously order what you're seeing based on things like how well it's selling, user ratings, I believe, certainly new releases. And there seems to be a higher sort of quality control as well on the PSVR 2 store. So there is a higher percentage of just decent, well-made games on there. It's interesting because one of the sort of critiques of PSVR 2 is that there's no games. There's certainly less games by pure number than there is on the Quest store. But again, there is far less quality control on the Quest store, far more shovelware, and you have to really sift through all this nonsense to find the good games. So it's another sort of Quest-specific critique there, but again, valid. But I guess you'd feel compelled to sort of make the point because this video says VR is not fun anymore. It doesn't say Quest is not fun anymore. It doesn't say Meta is not fun anymore. It says virtual reality, the whole thing, is not fun anymore. But of course, if your sort of experience of VR is this narrow lane of just the Quest, then you're missing out on a lot of cool stuff. So it's worth talking about because again, this is a really big channel and has a lot of reach. And he's making this video, unfortunately, saying that he's kind of done with VR. And he has been making a lot of content on VR. So he's saying that he's going to stop. So we'll see which way his channel goes. Now, the next thing he talks about, and this is really interesting, actually. This is really enlightening. And it's something that we've sort of thought was happening. He talked about the fact that Meta makes influencers sign a non-disparagement agreement.
I could continue to berate you with how Meta, with their aforementioned Meta Creator Program, have effectively tried to poach me on multiple occasions to get me in their affiliate programs for exclusive sponsorships or early access to headsets and games before release, and even maybe sitting at the feet of Zuckerberg himself at Meta Connect in 2023, like all of these other creators. But to join their club, you're so frequently met with non-disparagement agreements. But after all, who can blame these creators for signing that when they get front row access to Zuckerberg's toes?
So this is this may be the same thing as the Meta Ambassador Program. It may not be. There may be two separate things. They may be linked. They may be overlap. He doesn't mention that, but he does talk about this fact that as a content creator, he has been approached by Meta and asked to sign this non-disparagement agreement, which essentially would prevent him from criticizing Meta if he signs up with them. And of course, he gets various benefits for doing that. He gets invited to events. He gets, I imagine, free content, promotion, whatever else that goes along with it. The benefits that Meta gives to the people that do actually sign on with them. But it is interesting because we certainly did see a real sort of imbalance in the coverage of certain VR headsets over the last couple of years. We saw some really sort of off the mark, sort of petty and just wrong, really, criticisms of PSVR 2, especially around its launch. There was a lot of VR creators that mainly focused on Meta, making videos about PSVR 2's launch, criticizing it for various things that just weren't valid or was completely overblown. And it made you wonder, it did make you wonder at the time, like, is this some kind of bias? Is it their own bias? Is there something else going on? Are they being incentivized to be critical of PSVR 2? whilst being very positive about Meta Quest. And we just haven't seen a balance there, because of course there's critiques to make about all VR headsets. None of them are perfect. And there are certainly things to mention about the Quest. The fact that it's front heavy, that it's really kind of clamps to your face and it's very uncomfortable. And it's one of the critiques that GetHip makes in near the end of the video, is the fact that it's just really uncomfortable to wear.
Now, I could continue to list these headsets' shortcomings, the repetitive strain injuries and stress fractures caused by the headset's weight on people's necks, of which there have been multiple cases.
And he shows pictures of people that have actually had sort of neck problems and hospital visits because they've had too much weight on the front of the face. Yes, you can get attachments to mitigate that and make it more balanced and stuff, but that adds more weight as well. So even if you do go with those attachments, you're still adding more weight. You've got a heavy headset. But it's just to make the point that there are certainly critiques to make of each headset, and we didn't see that balance especially around the launch of PSVR 2, leading up to it and just after. So a lot of these quite high-profile VR creators made scathing critiques of PSVR 2 before they'd even tried it, or not having played on it, and making a big deal of the wire, for example, the thing that allows it to be lightweight, high quality, AAA, HDR, head haptics, eye tracking. All of those things that are amazing about this headset are enabled by the wire. It's just one example of this imbalance in critique, but I'm talking about that because, it's interesting that GetHip mentions this non-disparagement agreement, and it makes you wonder how far the rabbit hole goes there. It certainly is the case that Meta have been signing up influencers to promise to not criticize Quest headsets and content, and it makes you wonder if part of the incentive for the benefits that they would get from that sort of partnership is the other side of it would be to obviously criticize the competition. And so that was very interesting, and we certainly saw a lot of that over the last couple of years. But yeah, it does obviously talk about the comfort as well, with this thing just not being comfortable. Again, if you try other headsets, there are some very, very comfortable headsets out there. I would say PSVR 2 is amongst the most comfortable. It wasn't to begin with. I did have a few days difficulty with it when I was sort of learning the sweet spot and exactly the positioning of it that you need. But once you get that, I believe it is one of the most comfortable headsets that's ever been made. There's no pressure or weight at all on the front of your face. It sort of balances like a seesaw, sort of off the top of your head there. And it's counterweighted by the halo strap there. Beautiful. And then he talks about, he says, just go outside, take the headset off, go outside, have a life, touch nature. As if those things are mutually exclusive. I mean, I love VR. I also go to the gym 4 times a week. I also love going to raves and concerts. So I don't know where he's going with that, but he was quite critical. Maybe he was just being funny, but he was quite critical of people that play VR, insinuating that they are sort of just, cave dwellers that don't do anything in the real world. But of course, it's just another way of playing video games, and there's no difference there at all. It's just you've got a headset on instead of watching the TV. But yeah, so that's just a few sort of observations of this video. So it certainly does have some legitimate critiques of Meta specifically. The way they've tried to manipulate the market, the issues with the headset itself, in terms of comfort, the infestation of children, the shovelware that just suffocates the store. Those are all legitimate commentary, legitimate points. He's not wrong about any of that. But it's a narrow window of critique because it's absolutely not taking into account the successes and the benefits of VR on other platforms and I'm thinking mainly PSVR 2. That's just because that's where I am with it. He did talk briefly in the video about wanting PC VR to sort of pick up again, so that we can have a resurgence on PC. That he mentioned, Half-Life Alyx, of course, which really was just a single sort of standout title that Valve invested in to show off its headset and stuff. It didn't really lead to a VR revolution on PC. The bottom of the market on PC has really dropped out in terms of investment. We're not seeing PC exclusive VR games. We're not seeing investment in software on VR on PC. It's just there's not enough people spending money on it on PC. Again, it's the most expensive way to get into VR. Yes, it might be the highest quality in terms of, well, in some regards, you've got some of the headsets have a higher resolution, but I'd say PSVR 2 absolutely has the highest quality in terms of immersion, immersive features, and the rest of it. But PC is obviously a high quality way to play VR, and it's just not sustainable at the minute. The industry is not there for it, and it is currently being sort of kept alive on life support by mods, Unreal Injector VR. So this is people, it's not native VR games, it's a mod community adding VR mods to existing AAA games, and that is absolutely fantastic and people are loving it, but it does take thousands of dollars of investment and a bit of PC know-how to get all that stuff running. Which again, like, obviously I'm a PSVR2 evangelist, and that is where I play my VR, but regardless of my own bias, it is absolutely true that, that's the cheapest way to get into high-end VR. And it still has some features that even those expensive PC VR headsets don't have, like head haptics, eye tracking, OLED screen, resistive triggers, and all those features that make it the best entry into high-end VR on the market. So I just think, a lot of the criticism, the valid criticism in this video, does not apply to PSVR 2. And it's a shame we didn't get that same level of enthusiasm or sort of transparency about the benefits of PSVR 2 from these big VR creators that were obviously, potentially not GetHip. It seems like he refused the Meta agreement, so he's able to speak freely about that. But a lot of the creators they did sign up for the ambassador program, and maybe there's other incentives as well that aren't as public as the ambassador program. We don't know. But yeah, interesting video. And I'm just saying VR is absolutely still fun. Just depends where you do it. All right, guys. Bye-bye.